And then I could go on and say a lot more, but basically the final question, the final vote that I'm going to be having for the ATX Gov DAO is to determine the fate of the DAO. Now that the workshop is over, are we still going to use this to do things? We already have gone through the process. We already know what it's like to plan a real life event effectively, I think pretty seamlessly, and with the budget, a real budget from Intersect that was provided, right? So we collectively made these decisions. We made this happen, and I think overall it was a pretty good time. Are we going to keep doing it? I don't know. That's up to you guys. So those of you who are currently part of the DAO, please go vote. Do we continue it, or are we done, or are you going to abstain? I don't care what we do. It's up to you guys. And I think that's all I got. I need to sit down and compile a list of all the statistics and the data and all of this stuff, because real quick, the way it breaks down is that we had 53 members register for the DAO. Of those 53 members, I'm not quite sure who was workshop attending, but I can tell you for sure that we had more folks register for the DAO than for the workshop. Of those people, about 28 of them were eligible voters. That is, they held ATX Gov, the voting token. And of those people, about 50 to 40% participated in making those decisions at any given time. And of that eligible voter or of the voters who are eligible to participate in voting, about half of them showed up for the workshop yesterday. That was about half of the people that were at the event yesterday. So I think that makes a pretty big statement. Congratulations to all you guys. Yeah, okay, now I'm done.
Yeah, I wanted to just ask, a lot of what we think about together and what Claire thinks about and what we did in this workshop is trying to make participating in governance and the community more fun. So can you just give us kind of more thoughts on how you execute it, honestly?
Ooh, yeah, there was a lot of it had to do with just kind of sitting down and talking about things with community members and getting their input on what they would like to see and how to do this. And some of it was just me sitting down like thinking, how can I make this fun? How can I make this interesting? How can I make sure that there are real stakes, right? So one of the most important things was that some of these votes had stakes. For instance, the first vote, the major vote, the venue selection vote, we don't get funded unless we have a venue, right? I need to fill out, I think you fill that out in the paperwork to submit the contract to Intersect to get the grant funding. No venue, no event. So yeah, exactly, no venue, no funding, exactly. So that was real life stakes that we're gonna directly determine have a real life impact on this thing that we're collectively planning together. So having real life stakes, I found was an excellent motivator in the beginning. But then there was also the element of gamifying it. Some of you guys who probed a little bit deeper into how the ATX Gov DAO structure works know that there are some gamification elements, and we can speak to them later. But that was one element where folks were unlocking quests and then unlocking other quests, and then figuring out that, oh hey, not everyone's unlocking the same quest. There's certain things you can do to either get more information or have access to different documents or get more more points. And then of course, voting is the most important thing here. I don't care how many questions you do. It's great if you go read all the questions and you're super prepared to contribute to the conversation we had yesterday. Wonderful. I want you to vote, right? I want you to get active. I want you to participate. Go vote, go vote, go vote, right? That's the goal. And so by rewarding people with huge, ludicrous amounts of ATX Gov, right? I'm talking about like a very large amount for voting. Folks were incentivized to vote because they got rewarded large amounts of more voting power. So again, none of this, like I can't go cash this out. This is not real. There's no monetary value associated to this, and the group collectively produced over 1 million of these. So, food for thought, right? Yeah, Adam, what's up?
Do you feel like the on-chain governance process sort of carried over to make you a more close and cohesive group so that when you came together in person, you had better bonds to have a better workshop and run a real life event?
That actually cuts to the core of what I'm trying to get at here is that this sort of incentivized decision making is great for IRL events like what we're doing right now, and what this group could potentially do if folks vote to continue it forward, right? We were able to create a more cohesive group dynamic, which I think led to a pretty smooth and very energetic, very spirited workshop the other day. And on top of that, like we're all friends, we're all buddies, we're all working on something together. We all have projects that we're trying to edify one another, try to build each other up. So that carries over from obviously, if we're making decisions together, we want each other to succeed. If we can incentivize that process, all the better, right? Are we doing on time, Cole? Are we good? No, go ahead, Cole. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, do you see this as being something that we could extend into the North American members the North American.
I mean, that's gonna be up to the folks who help to coordinate and organize these events. What I can say specifically is that if you guys want to see KXGovDAO continue, go register and go vote for it to continue. Otherwise, it's not going to. So I'm going to do what y'all say. That will be an effort independent of Intersect and the North American Hub. But if we can join forces and figure out how to keep it together, then absolutely, right? All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and leave the stage. Thank you very much. I think Tex is next. Yes, sir.
All right, give just a second to get set up. Oh, we're rocking. All right, so I've been really excited to be here, to be a part of the community, be able to do a lot of different things, not only as somebody at Intersect, but also as just a general member of the Cardano community, right? So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Tex. I am the open source program manager at Intersect, and I've done a number of different things to reach out beyond that role and hear what you all in the community have to say, because that seemed to be something that was kind of bouncing off of a room with all white walls, if you will. So everyone was kind of echoing their own things, and I'm like, hey, I have the opportunity, and I feel that this role in particular is something that should really highlight what all of those opinions are, and if nothing else, give them a place to go. If that's just to me, or to direct them to the right people. So that's just about me in general. But I did want to get a chance to come up here and tell you guys a little bit more about the open source office, what we're doing at Intersect, and really how we're leading some of, or a lot of, in different capacities, the charge of where Cardano is headed. So what is the open source office? Basically where we sit is working on the different factors that ensure that the core of Cardano, the coding and everything, is actually open source, that it's accessible, right? So we're meeting all of those different details. I don't have like all of the reports in these slides. I'm just trying to make it something that's quick and for you to look at. All this information is also on our Gitbook page. But at the end of the day, open, accessible, transparent, all of those keywords or buzzwords, if you will, that's what we're trying to make sure is in place, and that allows the community to come in, not only give us feedback, but continue to drive this forward. So, yeah, I guess I led right into this, right? So why are we doing open source? We want to generate that community interest. We want your participation, and we really want to get that synergy going, right? So if everyone's, again, feeling like they're in that room just bouncing their own ideas off of themselves, then that's not really going anywhere. But if it's an actual really strong development conversation, then we want to get you in touch with those devs. Maybe you don't have the full level of technical experience. That's perfectly okay. There's different opportunities where a very business experience, or even just a community experience, is going to bring in a different element to what we're looking at. And the technical minds will understand how we can actually open that up a little bit further. So yeah, that's a little bit more. And then, of course, highlighting the permissionlessness of the blockchain. So the structure, if you don't already know, Christian Taylor, he's the head. He's been running everything. As far as I understand, he's been doing this for like the last 4 years. So everything that Jack and Nick have been doing together, Christian's kind of been moving up through that chain as well. And as Intersect got started, Christian took the lead of making sure that we were keeping open source a top priority here. I was able to come in and kind of start with a little bit of the analytical side of things, get those basic numbers out of the way. But that eventually turned into the program manager piece, where we've got a lot of different programs that we have going. So we have our developer advocates, we have our, what do you call it? We did a merit-based, or trying to figure out how open source was effective, right? If that was actually happening. And a number of other avenues that we're working with the open source committee on specifically. So the open source committee, although they're not pictured, they have a really unique place where they get to oversee basically anything and everything the open source office does. Even if it seems like it may not be their place to make a decision on it, they're at least advised, and they're able to provide their technical expertise with technical and non-technical. But we've been able to find and source a lot of key contributors throughout the blockchain and Web2 and Web3 spaces to come to the committee and really share and help us build and grow, so that this is moving at a pretty quick speed. Our developer advocates specifically, there's going to be another slide on them, but we have Saganya, Uday, Alex, and Bernard. And what you see on the other side here is the service providers and our strategic partnerships. So a lot of the data that you'll see as far as how we're open source, that's come from our use of Bitergia. We've actually partnered with them officially so that they are our official metrics partner, and we're working on how we can do better reporting, more consistent reporting, and other resources as well. So bring them up to the top, because there's a lot of projects, and a lot of these projects maybe don't understand how their open source is effective in their own rights. So we're really opening up the stage and giving them an opportunity that says, you can use any tool you want, but here's one tool at least to get you started. And so again, some of those same professionals that have helped us build open source and the open source committee, they also work for Bitergia, and they're able to share some of that advice more directly. The service providers in November, so not too far away, we're looking at releasing our project support services. So what this is a project of any and every level theoretically can come to Intersect, to the open source office, and say, hey, this is my project, this is what I'm working on. I am working to build this open source to the best capacity that I can. It's basically like tell me what I'm missing, right? So there's some part of that that's an analysis that we would do, but most of it's going to say, I know I'm lacking here, I know I'm lacking here. It could be marketing, could be the strategy and sustainability, but we can directly address those pieces based on how the open source office in general has done it, but also with these other toolings, and I would call anyone that's a service provider a potential partnership in the future as well. So there's some quick pictures there. We do get, again, this information on our Gitbook page, but just because not everyone gets there all the time, I do want to give you just a quick little highlight. Bernard's in South Africa. Alex is kind of all around Eastern Europe. Suganya is actually in Canada, and then Uday is in India. So aside from just doing the outreach to developers and helping us to get some of these project support services underway, we're also looking at using their connection in the community to institute even more community hubs, right? And so that's that, again, open accessibility piece that we're working with at every level in the open source office. So just a little bit more about the workflow here. I kind of let this read through itself, but Christian, as you see, oversees the backlog, and every input that we have really goes into that. That goes into the review, or I guess I'm the backlog, right? But Christian has oversight once all of that comes through the stage, and we decide, hey, what are we really working on? Move that through, and then it becomes an OSA initiative that we push out. So at any point, because in a quick format presentation, it may not give you everything. We have our open office hours that we run every 2 weeks. We also have our open source committee meeting. Both of those are open to the public. Although the committee meetings are a little bit more structured, we welcome input basically at any time as long as it's relevant to the conversation. And if there's something that we're missing, because there often is, we're more than happy to at least hear that and address that accordingly. So, just a quick overview, our plans for 25, because they're kind of big. We did a lot of things here in 24. I was trying to maybe spotlight some more of that, but again, I could have a 20-slide presentation in this case. But we're looking to expand the governance and structure of what open source is doing, and that's really, again, bringing in that community input in any and every channel that we can. We're working on an accreditation program, so anytime you hear badging, NFTs, recognition, all of those different things, we're working on how we do that from the open source side, because developers are probably, as much as they are the core crowd, of how things happen, they're not always getting that high level of recognition, so we'd love to bring that to the forefront. Strategic collaborations, again, that's our partnerships piece, where we really want to elevate these providers who have a lot of experience in the field, bring those tools up to the forefront, and when we show that as a partnership with the open source office, not only does that strengthen or endorse the work or the strategy that we have, but that's, again, extending those tools to the wider community. So we'll go through, I don't have to read every bullet point here, but again, any of this, we're more than happy to go over at any time. The biggest thing about our 2025 outlook, this is our paid open source model concept that we're looking at here. So the idea behind this is open source works by having your maintainers and having everything move from an ideation phase to a productization phase, and then how do we actually get this to where it's a fully mature project. So A lot of the different key documents you may have heard about are project lifecycle framework, our incubation. Some of this we're still finishing. And then open source maturity, we're able to apply that to each and every different project or what might become a product. So that's the basis of it, and that's what we control under Intersect. But through the committee, through the developer advocates, through open source libraries, which we're building right now, really want to put that on a different stage and try to get evaluation on that, say, hey, where does this add value to the community? Push that out for commercial adoption for those that have the money that might want to bring this and put this on chains that it is helping everyone. So there's a lot that's in here. There's a much better explainer video by Christian on our YouTube channel. But did want to at least highlight this because this has been a key focus in the background for the last couple of months and something that we're really excited to get finalized. We should have a white paper that's out hopefully by the end of the year that'll explain that a little bit more in detail. And that again brings in some of the basis of Cardano, that academic peer review. So that's something that we're consistently pushing all of our documents through. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Trying to keep that short and sweet. If you're not already, I think a lot of you are, but please do make sure to give us a follow at Intersect OSO on X, formerly Twitter, and then our YouTube channel. If you're not watching our YouTube channel, I think you should. We try to keep the content pretty short and sweet. The longest that's out there is like 30 to 45 minutes, but if you know anything about me, Christian, we're basically talking that whole time. So it really works in more of that blog or vlog style type of media there. So there's a lot of information that's in there. It's not just blank space. But yeah, any questions? Nothing, not even one? Texted it, Sarah. Colin, what's up?
So how do you determine, like, when you go through and say, we're gonna have these features ready, like, is there a steering committee for that? Do you guys, or are you guys the steering committee and?
So I'm the secretary for the open source committee, but the open source committee is the one who oversees those decisions in a certain respect. Some of that is we work really closely with like the Hyperledger model. So a lot of different things that they've implemented from that perspective is things that we're implementing, but in our own rights. And what happens is, or what has happened, is that those are further developed by the experts that we brought into the open source committee to enhance them to be not only different, but in some cases just a little bit better. So I don't know that it applies so much to features as far as it does methodologies, and getting a little bit of a clearer scale on, again, where are you at in that incubation or that life cycle stage? Like, are you actually incubating, or are you experiencing a period of growth, or are you mature? And so our incubation document, we get that out, should be a little bit clearer that way. But yes, the open source committee, again, we work pretty closely. So you see OSO, OSC, I know they're very, very similar, but they are because we work closely together, and they're not because we are separate entities. John?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the open source pay model that you had sort of shown up there, and whether potentially in the future that could result in some sort of a job board type of an application where developers could sign up, potentially companies could sign up, where you're looking for devs in the marketplace. Could that type of a model feed into a job board like that?
So I think I would best categorize that as you're reading the book before it's written. Not really, but no, it is written. So without getting too far into like a budget conversation, we do have what's called a maintainer-retainer program. The key piece of that is searching out and finding developers that have a varied level of skill. It could be new developers, it could be experienced developers, and it could be some who don't necessarily have to know Haskell, which is the primary one, but they may be skilled on another one. And some of that can be, I wouldn't say quickly translated, but translated in enough period of time. So the idea is in 25 with the appropriate approvals is to start bringing more of the community devs into the picture and get them integrating with the core development teams so that we can differentiate that even further and not just leave it to what was the 12 continuity suppliers, right? So we don't have to leave it directly to those companies, even if that number continues to grow. Again, we can further decentralize it, and that's the idea behind it. But yeah, that's the first level, is getting them paid. But how they get paid is, again, getting products out to the market that people want to use so that there is input to that. There's a couple different versions of it. I think if you see some different screenshots, you'll see that the Treasury is on there, but it's not really designed to involve the Treasury at all. It's really designed just to be a cyclical cycle outside of that that funds everything. Yeah.
Following on that question, and it could be totally stupid, but at the same time, I'm going to ask it anyway. The archival of open source libraries, a lot of times in the past, I've experienced, and developers experienced, where they've been paid for something that was actually already open source, and they could have got it for free, when instead they actually used another lab and had it done, had the work done. It just didn't get connected right at the right time. It actually cost them money, which in some cases operationally is a bad thing, right? So ultimately, archival ways of open source software, code that's already been written, things that have already been done. Is there going to be some sort of resource that's going to be available or open for everybody to see? And then how are you going to make sure that everybody has access to it or knows where to go, for that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. It's actually one of our newer developments that we have. So we just recently started the Open Source Libraries Working Group that is under the OSC. The OSC actually gave approval on that probably 3 or 4 meetings ago. So it's been a little while. It just took us some time to get it started. I would welcome anybody that has questions or knowledge or experience that way to come and bring that into the group. I think the current trajectory right now, or I know to an extent, we're looking to build off of the CNCF landscape model that they have. So we're looking to get our own instance up, I would hope, by early 2025, if not sooner. It's going to start to show projects that are not only connected to Intersect that are obviously all on Cardano, but yes, anything that's in that archival state, I mean, that would be just a different layer or section of that landscape, but we definitely do want to show it and highlight it. And if there's any point, one of the things that I or whoever I can bring to the picture is going to work on is to do a little bit of a deeper dive affiliation-wise, and if I can show kind of a growth pattern even of where they came out of these archive projects or where they came out of these other developers and they moved up into, again, the different status, DAOs, SPOs, DREPs, whatever, moved to a different tier, if you will, in the Cardano community. I'd love to show that trajectory from either a technical or non-technical space. So I got one back here, then I can come back to you. Yeah.
I just want to ask, so you mentioned that the Cardano treasury is not intended to be like a core part of the kind of revenue model. So my question is, like, say there's a piece of software that's intended to be like an end user product, but it inherently is not something that can generate revenue in like a commercial sense. What does that, how does that like fit into? Say, for example, there's a DEX that has no token. It's intended to be used by end users, but it doesn't generate fees. How does that fit in here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I have the full answer on that right this second, but what I would say is it's going to come back to what I would call the open source nature of it, and out of the different tasks that they are doing, how much of that can be used, picked up, or whatever to, let's say, improve somebody who is at that level of tokenism, right? If there is somebody who's traded or fundable or valuable, maybe there's something that they are missing that this other DEX came up with or whatnot. So I apologize if that's not the full answer. Y'all probably already heard this from me, but I am actually brand new to the crypto and the Cardano space, about 6 months, but I'm constantly drinking out of a fire hose and trying to retain as much as I can. So.
That question is a good one, because things have changed for us. So that's revenue change.
Right. Yeah.
So is there a, with technical talk about retaining model, that we can open source those change for us, they can be maintained, especially whatever.
Yeah, I mean, a chain explorer can at least like have like advertisements or something like that. You know? But if I'm thinking it's more like on the infrastructure side, that's like also intended to be used by end users, say like on the client side, like on the desktop, not a web browser based type of thing. How do you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't generate money by its nature. So
Yeah. Well, not like we're looking. So we're building a decentralized education system where there's a thing that the person who builds a module, every time somebody runs somebody through that module, they get some sort of payment out of that. And if somebody uses an open source tool, it's on chain by the nature of it. Is there a way that we can put a transaction fee on that tool being used, where that goes into an account to maintain that tool. And remunerate the builder who bought that, who built that tool.
What I'd have to say is that I think that anything is possible, because I think that's maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit from right this second. That's another reason why I kind of start off with where I'm at in the community and where I'm reaching out across a lot of the different channels that are going on. I'd like to make sure that, to an extent, any different group, working group, special interest group, whatever is addressed in open source. So
We'll talk about it.
yeah, John, I think I got to run, but is it quick or?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask real quick if the Intersect open source committee or if this office is the area that might be the one that affects documentation within Cardano regarding the dev documentation, like the dev doc website.
Yes. So the open source committee directly oversees the governance, which includes the technical writing piece of it, and that's another aspect of our project support services as well. So we can definitely dive deeper.
Awesome.
Sorry. Thank you, everybody. Dr. Adam Rush here.
Wait for the slides to get up.
This one. I've seen.
So yes, we have a beautiful governance map made by my friend Mike Hornan. So yeah, my name's Adam Rush. I'm very happy to be here talking on behalf of the work done by the governance parameters working group, which is part of the parameters committee. So back in December, we basically were charged with the task of reviewing the governance parameters for CIP 1694 and looking at how we could set the initial settings for the network when Voltaire governance came online. And it was hard because what we had was some spreadsheets and some results from the CIP 1694 workshops that had been conducted the year before, and they were all over the place. And they had done their best to put together like a comprehensive analysis of them, but there was just so much variation between the community's ideas and where people thought things should go, and the difference is that the way the host asked the questions, that we kind of used that as a starting off point, and we really wanted to get back to talking with the community about, well, what do you guys think about it now? Because as we went through this entire process of talking about CIP 674, making sure the community understood it, answering and asking and answering questions and coming up with new questions, it really evolved as we went. And so it was time to take a fresh look. And so we started a series of discussions on the Cardano forums across X. We had several X spaces, and then we pulled in Riley Kilgore, my colleague from the Summit platform, also helped build a custom polling front end that could be used with Summit platform to ask the community to, hey, connect your wallet and give us input, vote with stake, and tell us what you think that some of these parameters should be. And so what I want to do now is, and so here I have the names of the members of the working group, and it was a great experience working with these folks from across different communities of Cardano across the world, and sort of talk through what some of the governance actions are now that that you will come across when you're wanting to do governance on Cardano, and what those thresholds are that we came up with the settings for after discussion with the community, and also very importantly, discussions with the full parameters committee. Because the parameters committee is a group of subject matter experts that is works under the technical steering committee. And so the job of the parameters committee and the working groups under it, as part of it, is to be that sort of technical review layer. So if the question comes up, should we change it? They can get together, look at the research, talk to the community, be that review layer, and then come back and say, well, for this case, it was what should be the results that we tell the hard fork working group to put in the initial settings. But from now on, what it's going to be is here's a report that you all can read when you, the D-reps, vote on this. Because from now on, once we do Chang +1, it's going to be the D-reps, the SPOs, and constitutional committee members who will be determining these parameters going forward. going through the governance actions that might come up when looking at a governance on Cardano blockchain. First, the primary governance action, the one that has, when I say primary, I mean the one that has the ultimate privileges, is the motion of no confidence. If the ADA holders believe that the Constitutional Committee is not doing its job, they can vacate the Constitutional Committee with a vote of no confidence. And if this passes, it will override all other governance actions that have been proposed and pass first and vacate all the governance actions as well that the Constitutional Committee may have voted on in that APOC. And so this motion of no confidence governance action, after a lot of discussion, we decided that we needed to have a 67% threshold for DDEPs. We felt that that was important to have that supermajority because this is a decision that should not be taken lightly. The Constitution is in place to make sure that there are basic rights, basic rules of the road that everybody kind of agrees to before they submit governance actions. And the CC is supposed to basically veto a governance action if it doesn't fall within that parameter. But if the CC is not doing their job, we do need to have a mechanism for getting rid of them. And so, and you'll notice that for all of these actions, SPOs are set at 51%. And the reason for that is because we don't know how many SPOs are going to show up yet. And we've had feedback from SPOs saying, first, well, I just want to produce blocks. I don't want to be involved in politics because they associate governance with politics. And so if they take that attitude, they might not vote. And if they don't vote, it doesn't contribute to that threshold of 51%. And I'll get a little bit more nuance on that later. But second, there's also SPOs that are run by centralized exchanges and other large financial institutions. And so someone like Binance, they might say, well, I'll be an SPO because I need to get block rewards. I need to get the epoch rewards for my customers. That's my fiduciary responsibility. But I am not going to touch governance because that would put me regulatorily at risk. The US government, the SEC might come after me. And so they've indicated a lot of these large exchanges have said that they don't want to do governance because they don't feel like they can. So for now, we just say of the 51% of SPOs, and when we say 51% and 67%, of course, we mean of the representatives that hold stake. So, Cardano is a proof of stake system. So if one person has 1 million ADA stake and the other person has 1,000 ADA stake, it's weighed accordingly when they vote. So, I'll skip over the technical details for the sake of time, since I know that we are going through this. All right, so the next action two, the next action that has preference in the system is the update committee. So this is if you want to update the Constitutional Committee and add members to the Constitutional Committee or replace the ones that you just vacated. And so for this one, we said that we feel like, well, there's a difference. So on one hand, you might be trying to add members to the Constitutional Committee when it's just the system's running normally. You just want to add members. In that case, under normal conditions, we said the DREPs 67% because we should have a 2/3 majority because that's a pretty serious thing. You're adding people. We want to have a lot of discussion, but we lowered the value for motion of no confidence. Some people found, and we said, if the system is in a state of no confidence, and when if the DREPs have voted no confidence on the Constitutional Committee and kicked them all out, the governance of Cardano cannot go forward until the Constitutional Committee has been set again. And so we lowered it to 60% for the reason that we said the system needs to get back online, right? And so maybe you have 67% of people agree the Constitutional Committee has to go, but you can't get 67% of people to agree on who should take over again. Okay, well, let's at least, maybe not a simple majority, maybe we're not going to say 51%, but we are going to say at least 60% to ease that up a little bit so that if there is a strong majority consensus on who should be in the Constitutional Committee again, we can move forward. We can have a functioning governance system again.
Now, this is one of the only odd ones that has that 60%, correct?
It's one of the odd ones where we kind of have like a divergence within the same framework. Yeah.
It's not a super majority.
Right. Yeah. We have like certain
categories, and so we call the 60% the strong majority category. Yeah, go ahead.
Adam, I just have to ask,
Yeah.
you know, like if the Constitution Committee gets the vote of no confidence, you're saying all decisions that they have made in that term would be vacated?
All decisions that have not yet become effective. So,
Okay,
what,
just
yeah,
those,
right.
just those.
Each governance, right. Each governance action has a lifetime of $60.
Okay.
So,
I just
right,
said, you know,
yeah.
they do good work for a year, and then one
Right,
day
yeah.
they're evil.
No, that's all good. I know that's good. That's a good differentiation because this is part of the permissionless of the blockchain and the immutability of the blockchain. If a governance action has been enacted, there's no going back on it. It's on the blockchain. You can't take it back. But if there has been a vote where we say, should we pass the Cardano budget and should we withdraw some money for something, and the CC all votes and says yes, we should withdraw money for that purpose. But then the D-reps look at that and say, holy cow, that is completely unconstitutional. You guys never should have approved that because you're giving money away to some sort of inside cabal. So instead of us approving the budget, we're going to go ahead and do motion of no confidence to kick you all out. And so what would happen is now the fact that the CC has passed a treasury withdrawal, that gets vacated because the D-reps did not pass that treasury withdrawal. So that particular governance action was never fully ratified. And the fact that the CC has it ratified on their end is now moot because that CC just got kicked off, and that governance action is now expired, and it goes off the chain until a new CC. And then once a new CC comes back, people will have to resubmit their governance actions.
But the CC says, yes, that's constitutional. The D-reps say, no, we're not passing it.
Right. I mean, it could be that the D-reps just decide not to pass it,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't pass. I'm talking about an extreme situation. Motions of no confidence are an extreme situation.
But that's also why they get rushed, right? So like, if
Right, exactly.
motion of no confidence is passed, all of the stuff that the CC said is constitutional, that the D-reps haven't voted on, that is all tabled.
That's right. That's why the motion of no confidence is such an extreme option that it basically stops all governance until a new CC is put in place, and then governance actions can start to be submitted again. It's basically the reset button. All right. Now, let's say that we want to have a new constitution. We've decided, we've gone to Buenos Aires, we have come up with a draft constitution. We want to have this draft constitution replace the interim constitution. Everybody's happy with it, and we want to put it on chain. We're going to have to get 75% of D-reps to agree to it. So 75% of the governance stake held by D-reps needs the vote to approve that new constitution. We really felt that the constitution should not be taken lightly. This is something that will be binding on anyone who wants to submit the governance action. And then the existing constitutional committee must also vote a supermajority to approve it as well. Because they might say, hey, you elected us to oversee the Constitution. Now you're trying to change the Constitution. We can't agree to uphold this new Constitution you all have come up with. So if they vote no on it, they can block the new Constitution from taking effect. Now, what would be the response? If 75% of D-reps want a new Constitution and the Constitutional Committee votes it down, no confidence, right? You get where I'm coming from. And then you replace the Constitutional Committee, and then pass a new constitution. But these are checks and balances. So we have a guarantee that the Constitutional Committee will agree that they will uphold the Constitution, and the new Constitution is passed by a mandate majority of stake. You have to have 75% of the governance stake agree to this, but through the D-reps. So that's just a really strong indication that the Cardano community agrees. I'll do it first.
When you talk about D-reps 75%, you are talking about voting power or
Yes.
number of D-reps?
Voting power.
Voting
Yes.
power.
Yes.
So we could say that sometimes we have just 30% of the D-reps.
That's true. It could be that there is a small number of individuals with an outsized amount of voting power who vote to approve something. And if that's the case, I encourage you all to change your D-rep delegation. Calling it open.
So, sorry, nerd question. Is that an integer or a float on the 67%? Because if you have 4 out of 6, that's 66.666%.
Let's talk more later.
Yeah.
All right. So action 4, hard fork initiation. All 3 branches of the governance system must agree to hard fork initiation. Again, SPOs need 51%. DREPs need 60%, a mandate majority to agree, and the Constitution Committee needs to have a supermajority, 67%. Now, there's one more trick. In our Constitution, I believe it's also in the interim Constitution guardrails. I know it's in the draft Constitution guardrails that we're talking about. The Constitutional Committee must go and look at the on-chain the adoption of software, node software by the SPOs. So we realized that, hey, we can't count on the fact that Binance is going to vote. So instead, we're going to have the Constitutional Committee have a responsibility to look at what version of software is running, and when they produce a block, what does the header say? Does it say they're using the new version of software that they are ready for the hard fork? So that's one of the guardrails in the Constitution. So that's a place where the Constitution can help to guide something like a hard fork initiation. But again, we have this separation of powers where everybody has to agree to it. It has to be a strong percentage. Protocol parameters, update governance action. So this is like, what if we want to change these parameters that I'm talking about, right? What if we want to change them and have different values? Well, the Constitution Committee has to agree by 67%, again, supermajority. The DREPs for network, economic, and technical group, they all have to be also supermajority, 67%. So, cool. Now there's one outlier there, the governance group. That is, do you want to change the threshold for changing the Constitution? Well, we better make sure that that threshold for changing the Constitution is the same percentage as changing the Constitution, so somebody doesn't try to do an end run and change the threshold and then change the Constitution. So that's 75%. Oh, and SPOs also have to do, there's also some of these parameters within the network economic and technical governance are designated as security parameters, and we also ask the SPOs to input on those as well. All right, and then treasury withdrawal. Again, DREPs and CC members, 2/3. So you have to have a supermajority of these 2 branches agree. The DREPs have to look at it and say, is this a good idea? So if the DREPs think it's a good idea, they can vote on it and vote to withdraw things from the budget. The Constitutional Committee can only judge things by the Constitution. That is in CIP 6094. So they do not look at this and say, I think it is awful that Shaggy is going to get 100,000 ADA to run a marketing campaign. I'm going to vote against it. Jenny cannot veto Shaggy for that reason. She must say, well, I don't want Shaggy to get that ADA to run a marketing campaign, but I am bound by the fact that I'm a Constitutional Committee member, so I have to vote yes, it is constitutional. So that is how this looks, and there is also a provision within the Constitution that says it also has to be within the budget. So we have that as well. That's what also another thing Constitutional Committee looks at is has the community agreed upon the budget? Yeah. Well then, we better make sure that nobody's trying to draw more out than the budget allows for that category. And yeah, go ahead. Jerry, go ahead.
So two questions. You kind of touched on one of them. So is there either constitutionally or in the guardrails, like on the actual ledger, limits to how much can be withdrawn at any one time?
Not at this time.
Okay, but it can be. I mean, it can be either through the Constitution or through guardrails.
It can be limited within the Constitution. Yes.
Okay, because I want to just
right
the entire Treasury.
Yeah, that's a hot topic of debate.
Are you familiar with the budget committee working on something like that?
Yeah, so there's going to be a net change limit, which is essentially what you're saying.
Okay.
How much can be withdrawn in a given period from the treasury?
Right.
That will be defined in the Constitution. It's not a parameter, I don't believe.
Right.
On change.
But it's something that we do plan to have in the draft.
Yeah.
In guardrails in the draft.
It can be made from the ledger as well if you want.
It could.
It could.
It would have to be another parameter. We'd have to add that parameter to the
That
way.
way, correct.
Ledger. Yeah.
I have another question. So say the SBOs indeed don't want to participate in governance, is there a way for them to delegate their kind of SBO power to a DREP?
We'll get to that.
Okay, great.
All right, so info actions, or as we like to call it on X, nice poll. An info action is something that does not affect the blockchain. So an info action can only pass if it receives 100% from everyone, which is not going to happen. So basically what info actions do is use it to gauge sentiment. So you can say, should we name the next hard fork Hosky hard fork? That was governance action number 1. And then people can say yes, no, and constitutional committee has to say is or is not constitutional, or they can abstain. So that is how, that's what the info action does. Now, the info action can be used, according to the Constitution, for things like, hey, let's have a budget, and let's have a vote on the budget and see if people agree with this budget that we're proposing. And then the Constitutional Committee agrees that if whatever this poll, this on-chain info action says, for people agreeing to the budget, that will be the budget for the next year. And we will only pass treasury withdrawals if they fit within this budget based on this info action. So they can have nuanced rules that the Constitutional Committee can take advantage of, but it doesn't actually change the blockchain, which is fine. It allows us a nice tool for that purpose. But DREPs, SPOs, and CC members can all vote on it or not vote on it, and it just is on the blockchain for 6 epochs, unless everybody votes 100%, and then it would expire from the blockchain. But the chance of everybody voting yes 100% is not. It's impossible. And so that's basically it. Now there is one addition that's very exciting that we just got through talking with between the parameters committee, the technical steering committee, the ledger team, and that is we did find a way to give SPOs the power to auto abstain or auto no confidence. So SPOs, when they vote with their poll keys, and so they are not able within the system to say, I'm going to have this SPO be my SPO voter, or I'm going to have this DREP be my SPO voter. But what they can do is they can take their reward wallet for where their block rewards go, and they can set their reward wallet to be either auto abstain or auto no confidence option. And if they do one of those two things, the ledger software will look at that and say, okay, this pool is auto abstain, so therefore I will count every vote with the exception of hard fork, because we do want input on that. Every vote except for hard fork will be auto abstain as the SPO. So that's kind of our little workaround, because it would take too much work to build in the options to allow programmatic voting for the SPOs on chain. But it was a really nice way to come up with that solution. So we do now have auto abstain for SPOs, so we can tell Binance and the rest that they can do that. So that's all I have. I don't think I have time for more questions, but if you want to hit me up afterwards, we can talk more about this and get more into the weeds. And we also have a report that you can read. So thank you very much. You can find the report by going to my X page, and it's
go to his X page.
It's on Intersect page somewhere too. I'll make sure it's accessible. Sorry, I don't know the link off the top of my head.
All right, guys. One more round of applause for all the member spotlights. All right, so now this is the time where we take a group photo. So I believe we would all like to come up right in front of the stage right here. We're gonna have Maria, the lovely photography. Let's figure this out. Let's see if we can collectively decision make where to sit.
Right here. Got it?
Yeah.
Hey.
Give me your best smile now, please.
Is it?
All right, now we're gonna take a quick little break, and then we're gonna have Joshua Stone come up and give his keynote.